Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, joined again today by Justin Nugent. And Justin's going to be telling us what the trade monster AI and his gut are telling us about the markets today. It's a tester, but remember, these create great opportunities, folks. So we're going to be telling you about those opportunities today on the Rebel's Edge. Welcome back, folks. That is Justin Nugent. I am John Najarian. Pete apparently caught some sort of a bug coming back from California. And so Justin kind enough to jump in again today, as he did 2 different days last week. So thank you very much, Justin. Great to have you, sir.
I appreciate it. I will join as many days as you allow me to.
Oh, well, be careful. Well, Justin, let's dive right into what's going on with global macro markets. And obviously, folks, we couldn't have the show today without touching on the big surge in oil prices. And we hit 119.50 roughly for WTI, Brent even higher than that. And when that happened, folks, we sat there looking at the chart going, well, the last time we hit 120 was back in 2022. And Justin, maybe you remember a war going on back then, but I don't. But oil was 120 back in 2022.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up. I saw this thing, and it was asking how many days during the prior presidency was oil priced higher than it was priced now. And I tried to pull up that statistic. I couldn't find it. But yes, I concur with everything you just said.
Well, there you see a chart that Jared has pulled up here on TradingView. And we have pulled back substantially, by the way, folks. Not just $19, but we're down to $96.33 per barrel right now. And like I said, we hit 119.48 in the early morning trade. And it's basically a 24-hour commodity, but just like gold and silver are. But this was something that when a customer called me and asked, what should I do here? I said, you should be selling your 50% of your energy stocks. But again, I can't pull the trigger for you. I can just tell you what I'd do if I held your position. And she had a lot of energy, Justin. So I think it's a smart idea to take some profits there instead of half of the price if and when it falls back into the 60s, which I say is coming. Just not today, probably not a month from now, but it is coming. Once this is resolved over there, we'll have all that Venezuelan oil on the market. Not all of the oil fields in Iran will have been destroyed. So we'll have a lot of that on the market as well. All right. Well, Justin, as far as VIX, let's hit how high it got today, because that was a spike I think not a lot of people saw coming. We did have some unusual activity in the VIX, but my gosh, this was an incredible pop to the upside through 30. What did you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, well, the VIX opens up, and what does it open up? About 17% higher, right? Already it's pretty high, right? It's around 30 prior to that. And then, yeah, just falls down here pretty hard, and I think is actually trading in the red now. So that's a good thing for normal markets. And I think that's probably going to continue, to be entirely honest. I mean, you can look at a lot of different metrics, whether you're looking at the S&P being oversold on a certain basis, whether you're looking at where markets typically bottom right around the middle of March. Well, that's also, close to where we bottomed last year, whether you're looking at a whole lot of different breadth oversold indicators, your McClellan oversold indicator, or even just the presence of prices near the 200 MA, not just in the SPY, but in so many large stocks out there. The market usually moves in tandem. I think you've got a lot of reasons to look at some of these patient buyers and make an assumption that they're probably reaching into their pocket and making a bet. And oh, by the way, last thing I'll say, money market funds are now up to either 8.4 or 8.7 trillion. That I wouldn't expect to get dipped into quite yet, but I would say as we start to get closer to that period where Powell is out, we're about 66 days out from that. May 15th is the day. I made a countdown calendar for anyone wondering on the market outlook. As we start to get closer to that, and as we start to hear more from Warsh, I think you probably start to see people price in what's going to happen to rates, and I think that outlook is going to change from where it is right now.
Well, I would agree, and I can't wait. Famously, I guess all three of us, you and Pete and I, have said that this guy hasn't exactly covered himself in glory, Jay Powell, that is, nor have many of the other Fed governors who say that they are data-driven and then refuse to react to the data. Let's talk about prediction markets, because crude oil was part of that. And as Justin and I discussed last week, folks, prediction markets are a $6 billion entity right now. In other words, there's about $6 billion collectively across all of the different prediction markets, and there are a bunch. Obviously, the two largest, Kalshi and Polymarket, are the ones that we cite mostly, but there are a ton of others. And apparently some members of Congress, which Justin brought to my attention a week ago, wanted to regulate those entities, those prediction markets, because somebody was gaming those markets. In other words, somebody thought that they knew that Khomeini was going to be taken out and so forth. Well, that's a $6 billion market, but they're more than willing to let Congress trade on a $69 trillion market all day long. So which do you think, folks, is a bigger thing that disrupts the world, or that lets one group that's got the information profit more than the other group? And I'd actually posit it's the $69 trillion stock market, not Polymarket and Kalshi. What do you say, Justin?
John, I think you're mistaken. It's not Congress that trades. It's Congress's husband or wife that trades.
Yes.
So let's get that out of the way. No, I'm kidding. I agree with you entirely. I'll throw another hat into the ring of the Polymarket game here. That is, first of all, you want a real degenerate market. Here's one that I would never do. Bitcoin up or down in the next 5 minutes. That's for anyone looking to just go play roulette. There's your roulette. That exists on Polymarket. Secondly, more importantly, kind of a cool one. Iran-Israel-U.S. conflict ends by, and then it's a prediction market. Right now, they're essentially, hey, by May 15th. And you know what I think is really interesting about this? They're saying by May 15th. That's not just the day that Powell's out. That is also where crude futures predict that this conflict likely ends by. Crude futures are essentially pricing in probably an end there, crude down to back around the 70 mark-ish in September, which would be in time for those November midterms. Now, whether or not that happens or not, I don't know. But that would be the wisdom of both the crude futures market and the poly market as well.
Can you imagine, Justin, the idiot that wants to bet on nuclear Armageddon, more or less? Because there are various nuclear posits that have been placed on Polymarket and Kalshi, even though they say they don't want to pay off on Khomeini's death, because they say we don't want death to be part of this. Well, you could have not let them list it then, folks. To both Polymarket and Kalshi, I say you should pay up, suckers, or don't let them post it. But to the person that wants to buy nuclear Armageddon, who are you going to be getting the money from?
Yeah. Better off buying the Jesus.
Make it to your account is what I'd like to know.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us could spend that. Forget about the the grave dancing and all the rest. Who's going to be able to spend that if indeed it's nuclear Armageddon? You're sitting there looking out the window going, I called it. There's a big mushroom cloud in the distance. Yeah. All right, folks. Let's talk about hims and hers, because this one whether you need hair, whether you need ED medications. Those were two of the big things they started off with. But then they went for the GLP-1s. In other words, the semi-glutides and all that kind of thing that have become so popular. And the president and others really pushed the drug companies to take the prices down on those, because many people were paying $1,000 a month or more for that, apparently. Well, Hims and Hers basically made their own special compounds using multiples of those. And then they got that taken away from them once they could produce enough, once Novo Nordisk and Pfizer and all the rest, once they could make enough of these semi-glutides, they didn't have that exclusivity really anymore. But now they're striking a deal, Justin, with Novo Nordisk, Hims is, and that's why the stock's up 44% today.
Yeah, and I think, GLP-1s gave him sort of this new life, right? And then this is helping them a lot because now we're saying, okay, they can lean on this. But the stock market likes to look out to the future. You know what I think is going to be interesting is this sort of peptide revolution that's sort of hitting us right now, where GLP-1, okay, well, that's been around a pretty good amount of time, right? It's just sort of now seeing this big mass adoption. But there's a lot of other interesting peptides out there, and sort of the you might call it maybe the research chemical space or et cetera, that a lot of people are using pretty liberally. But honestly, a lot of those people are leaning on some kind of sketchy Chinese labs to get them. Would not be surprised if in a year or two down the line, we end up looking at Hims as a purveyor of not only GLP-1, but a lot of those other peptides that are sort of starting to get pretty popular and are very weird to get over here.
Well, yeah. And, an awful lot of folks are trying to, the longevity trade, the trade where you're betting on you living longer and living better as you're living longer. So everything from retatrutide to many of those peptides that Justin just touched on, folks. I wouldn't be surprised. What I would caution, however, is it is a commodity business. I mean, briefly, they tried to put, some sort of exclusivity, trademarks, all the rest on these semi-glutides and on, again, those peptides. And Kennedy, the health secretary, recently just basically said, nope, we're not letting you guys do that. These have been out in the public domain for a long time. So could Hims have a cleaner product than, as Justin said, is offered basically through Temu or whatever? And the answer is yes, they could. But take a look at the stock when it was in the 50s. After a 40 some odd percent jump today, it's $22. So these commodities, once it becomes commoditized and anybody can compete in the space, I don't know that their profit margin is this big anymore. I think it's more like that. So we'll keep our eye on it for you, folks. I know Justin will. All right. Let's take a look at Live Nation, because they're getting a pop today. And this is another one of those situations, Justin, where a man with a briefcase can steal more than a man with a gun. Anybody who's gone to a concert and looked at the actual price on the ticket versus what they've had to pay for Live Nation and Ticketmaster sort of things knows that these things have been marked up like crazy. And the fact that they're going to have to pay $200 million in damages to participating states in this lawsuit by the DOJ, well, I would say that they would probably do that almost annually and still make a nice fat profit, because they are basically, they're not the performer. They are marking up the performance ticket and then selling it through, what is no longer very high-tech means to deliver those tickets to the public. And I think they're probably marking them up too much, Justin. What do you say?
Yeah, but hey, they dodged the breakup bullet, and now Ticketmaster lives to fee another day. Excuse the bad pun there. And that's why they're up a ton right now. Obviously, the DOJ originally sought a full divestiture in 2024, but the emerging deal has seemingly fixed all that. So Ticketmaster lives on, and yeah, it's popping.
Well, airline stocks, keep an eye on these folks because obviously the price of crude that trade throughout the weekend, of course, again, it's a 24-hour trade, and Jet A and so forth, diesel, fuel oil, all the rest of those derivatives of crude oil are something that these airlines, in some cases, Southwest used to hedge. I don't think they hedge anymore, but these airlines, it's 25% basically of their costs are borne by the price of fuel. And so when fuel goes up, there's no doubt that they're less profitable, especially since they've already sold the tickets in most cases at a price that probably should be higher if they were taking into account a 25% or a jump like we saw, as much as 30%, I think Justin said, over the weekend. So we're keeping our eye on JBLU, on AAL, on LUV, which is Southwest, on UAL. Those Middle East tensions, certainly people worried about, well, is the Strait of Hormuz going to be closed or will the oil still flow? And that's a big question, Justin, that obviously is a day-by-day, hour-by-hour question, right?
Yeah, exactly. So over the weekend, we started to get this news that G7 nations were going to hold this emergency meeting on oil to basically determine if they were going to release the oil reserves. As of 44 minutes ago, it looks like, according to Reuters, they have decided not to release those oil reserves just yet. But I will say, regardless, just the announcements that maybe they're thinking about doing that definitely seemed to help overnight, because you're exactly right. Yeah, overnight they had popped, I believe, to about 30% higher in those in that futures session, right around like 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. And they're certainly well off that high right now. The only thing I'll say about airlines is that I was on a show called The Take, sitting in once again for Pete today with our lead UOA analyst, and we were looking at some of the UOA that we were spotting in the airlines. And you know, over last week, it was all about the puts. They were right, and now it does look like, you know, I don't want to get too specific, but there's one airline in particular. John, am I able to say something like this? Like the specific airline, or should I leave it? Okay. UAL in particular is what we were talking about on the show. They were coming in with 20,000 calls. They came in again while we've been filming and hit another 20,000 call spreads. So a bet to the upside over the next month or two in UAL is seemingly what they would be aiming for here. And the more 5-figure contract counts that I see in that name, the more convinced I personally am.
Yeah, well, I like it as a trade. When you look at where it was the Friday before the shooting war started on the 28th, so on the February 27th, United was up around 115, 116. So if you think that there could be a resolution here, even though last Friday the president said unconditional surrender, and that spooked a lot of people, we could be looking at United Airlines seeing retracing, as Justin said, half of that move from 116 back down here to $88, and say, if you recoup half of that, the stock is, in the 90s, high 90s. And that'd be a nice profit on those calls that they've been accumulating. And there are several of those out there, folks, where whether it's Justin's Trade Monster AI or our unusual activity with the Heat Seeker, they are definitely buying back in and playing for a bounce, because it was 85 earlier today, United was, and now it's more like 88, 89. All right, Justin, one more. Let's do Paramount Skydance. And turns out that Tencent Holdings, which is the company that's behind TikTok, I think, aren't they one of the big owners of TikTok? But anyway, a Chinese company, a media company in China, they are saying once again that, hey, we already said we'd put $1 billion commitment on the table for this deal. They said that back in December, folks. The deal being, of course, Warner Brothers Discovery, WBD, And Tencent apparently says, we're still good for it, guys. You're doing this big deal. We'd like to do it with you. What do you think of that, Justin?
Tencent's a monster. I think Tencent is, I'm not a big Chinese stock market guy, to be honest. I just think it's a super weird, volatile market that is usually super news oriented, and it's a little uncomfortable sometimes. But if there was a stock that I just think is just such a monopoly in a sense, it would be Tencent. Man, they have so many stakes in so many things. It feels like they're a little bit more of like a venture capital fund or a hedge fund than they are just a company. They're incredible.
That's
So
fair.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one for sure. They have hands in a lot of different pots.
Well, we don't have a video for you guys today, but what we do have are two quick takes from Justin and I on the World Baseball Classic, which is going on in Puerto Rico. I'm actually in Costa Rica right now, Justin, instead of Puerto Rico, visiting with some friends. And another beautiful place, not an island though, a peninsula that we're on right here, Papagayo Peninsula. But I remember there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of interest in the World Baseball Classic in Puerto Rico. And one of the things that I found especially interesting, Justin, was, and I had no idea, but do you know that Great Britain plays baseball?
No, I did not, actually. I did not.
Yeah, they do. And you can bet on them. And I looked at it on Polymarket and Kalshi. They actually, of course, we know Japan, and they're quite a power because, look at Shohei Ohtani, fabulous player, most valuable player and all. But Japan's got great teams. Panama's got great teams. Mexico's got great teams. Even Canada has great teams. And there have been some pretty good fights on the field because apparently a lot of these folks don't like each other, especially the different style of baseball that they play. But the WBC World Baseball Classic, you can go over to Polymarket and pick your team. And just like anything else, it will give you the opportunity. You know who else has a baseball team? Israel. I know Dominican Republic, but Israel and the Dominican Republic are playing today. And apparently the Dominican Republic is dominating that game. I'm not surprised.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at the WBC page on Polymarket right now. Yeah, I love to see these moves in real time. This is so cool. Obviously, you can see, Great Britain, Brazil, super flat, back and forth, 52-48. Now Great Britain up 83-18 over here. So obviously, it looks like they are probably dominating the game that they're playing, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, well, when you look at the major league rosters, folks, and you see how many of these great players are coming from Cuba, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and so forth, you can't just write off Japan, of course, because I think it might have been either the Dodgers or the Yankees were the first ones to really bring in some great players out of Japan. But they've just been lights out, many of these Japanese players, extremely disciplined, and obviously many of them huge stars in the American game. But again, going down through this list, it's amazing how many of these countries that you wouldn't have picked. And again, the Netherlands and Israel, I didn't know those guys would have been part of this, but they're in the first round of Pool D playing each other, and you can bet on them right there on Polymarket. There you go. All right, Justin, let's hit one more sports headline, and that is college basketball March Madness. So here we are, we're in March. A lot of these teams, you and I talked about it last week, that Duke had leapfrogged over Michigan. Has anything changed for you as far as which team in college basketball down on right now, the NCAA basketball? And I'm talking about the men for now, but if you want to throw out a women's pick, feel free.
I'm already uninformed enough about the men's picks for me to be stepping into women's college basketball. That'd be a wild thing for old Justin to try and do here. But I think I said that. I think I said I liked Arizona when we first talked, and I'm gonna stick with the one I came with. I
Yep.
think the odds are pretty poor right now, but I'm gonna lean on them and just say, hey, plus 475 sounds good to me. um, yeah, I'll say Arizona.
All right. And a dark horse still, folks, even though Pete's not with us today, I'll say is Nebraska, who I think just had a fabulous game against Iowa over the weekend. And but that's a dark horse. That's not a favorite. Favorite, I still got to go with Duke. But dark horse, yeah, I like the way Nebraska plays. So that's it. All right. Well, Justin, thank you very much, sir. Great job. Folks, he is the guy behind the Trade Monster AI. So if you guys would like to learn more about that, just dial up one of your helpful salespeople at Market Rebellion, and they can tell you all about it. We also have coaches and mentors for you at Market Rebellion. So if you need a little tuning up of trading strategies, by all means, sign up for that. And Justin, anything before we go?
I'll say one more. Yeah, at the open, you said I would say something about Trade Monster AI, and I would love to. I will just say this is one of those rare
Please.
situations where there is both Trade Monster and UOA. And not to just keep giving away too much in this Rebel's Edge, but Marvell today, here and now, in the 90s. That's what they like for April 17th expiry. That's the most compelling signal I'm seeing in Trade Monster. It comes after Friday's gap up, and that's the Trade Monster one that I'm seeing. And in the UOA, I definitely won't say what it is, but they are hitting Marvell there as well, similarly. So that would be your chocolate and peanut butter, or whatever the good mixture analogy is. So
now you're going back to Lopresti, chocolate and peanut butter. All right. Well, thank you, Justin. Great job as usual, sir. And folks, we will be back tomorrow with another Rebel's Edge. Comes your way at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.